Hi, I'm Ryan North.
I'm Lori Fungi.
And I'm Sean Wilson. You're listening to Foster Family Matters, a production of CK Family Services. People united through God to enhance the physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being of at-risk children and families.
Welcome back to Foster Family Matters. We are super duper excited that you have decided to join us yet again. And have we got a special episode to bring you today?
Yeah, we do.
Do we have a special episode, Ryan? Would I lie to the people?
No, I think if you're going to invoke super and duper in sequence, then you better crush it.
And I'm talking not even hyphenated. I'm talking like a full-blown super, comma, full-blown duper.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like super duper is one word.
Can they be in all caps too? Super duper.
That's not good etiquette.
I feel like this conversation's not delivering on your promise. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
well, it's still early.
Maybe we get to the point. I mean, it's in the title. It's in the title of the episode where they hit like play. It might be.
It is now.
It is now. That's. I think we just time traveled. We just impacted the title that. Anyways, so today's episode is about healthy relationships. This is, if you've been following us for a while, if you're just joining us, I just so sincerely apologize for this rambly intro. But if you've been with us for a while, it's what you've come to expect and love about us. So
it's all
rambly
part
intros.
Of the game.
Good news. The intro is only scheduled to last for another 20 minutes. But I digress. So we're in the middle of a 5-part series that we're doing on healthy relationships. And we started off with an intro to the whole kind of kit and caboodle of what we were going to be talking about. And then we did a show on the importance of giving care in the context of relationship. And then we did an episode on the importance of receiving care in the context of a healthy relationship. And today, we are going to talk about the importance of interdependence.
That's right.
In the context of healthy relationship.
What exactly does interdependence mean, Sean?
You know what it does not mean is independence, which is how I misstepped and referred to it. And I believe parts 1, 2, and 3 of this series on healthy relationships. But I feel secure enough in our healthy relationship with the world to admit that.
A big relationship.
Wow. I'm very
I thought he was going
confident.
to say with the three of us.
I was feeling special.
I feel healthy,
for a
connected to
I mean, you're part of it. You're part of it.
Well, I am
That's true.
part
We're
of
part of the
You're
world.
part of the world.
Well done.
All right.
We are the world.
We are the world.
So interdependence. Interdependence in the context of relationship. I feel like you kind of like threw me under the bus asking me to define that based on all of our pre-show conversations,
I think
Lori.
it means this.
Oh,
For those of you who are
those
only
just
listening to the show, he did this. Yeah, we're gonna
intertwined
have,
fingers.
there's definitely gonna be some
Not
editing
prayer
involved
hands.
in this one.
Interlock.
Intertwined.
There we go.
Yeah. So the topic of this one is interdependence in the context of healthy relationship. Lori, take it away.
Wow. I just want to enjoy that moment for those of you just listening.
Oh,
He did this.
fantastic.
The comedic stylings of Sean Wilson.
He's funny.
He funny.
He's funny. Interdependence.
Are we going to have to start over? I think we have to start over.
No, don't.
I like
No?
it.
Okay.
It's
If you want people to know who we
fantastic.
really are,
That's right. In
That's
the
a valid
flesh.
point.
three people who can't focus.
We had like 9 people
Trying.
in. Never mind.
All right. Interdependence. To me, this is the notion that at some point in time, Ryan and I talk about this a lot, that you have to be dependent upon somebody in order to gain a sense of independence. There's scientific research that shows when we're in relationship with one another, how do we maintain our own independence and yet create intimacy and cohesion and relationship?
Yeah.
And so there's a part of that. The best example that I think of that comes to my mind is my husband and I, and that the idea that he doesn't complete me. And I don't complete him.
You're not married to Jerry Maguire?
Nope, that's not our relationship.
Okay.
But what
Good
we
to know.
do is that we complement one another. And we wouldn't have a marriage without one another, and we need both to have a relationship, but we can still maintain our independence. I can still have my own thoughts and have my own likes. That Runaway Bride movie, this always kind of takes me back to Julia Roberts liking every single kind of egg of the husband or fiance that she was with, right? So she lost a sense of herself in that movie, and she lost a sense of herself in the relationships that she was in. And I think that we can see this in a myriad of different relationships, whether it's a spouse or a partner, a friendship, a working relationship, even our relationship with our kids. Are we losing a sense of who we are in our relationship? And if so, then that relationship, in all honesty, may not be that healthy.
Yeah, and I think that this potentially is a complicated topic, and also potentially one that we could talk about for 3 hours, right? Because
this part of the podcast, it's going to be broken down into 6 additional podcast episodes.
All I meant by that is so good, because if you lose your sense of self, you cannot be in a healthy relationship, right? You have to be two healthy, in the context of marriage, right? So the two healthy individuals who then unite in matrimony.
Let me go back a step further, because we're assuming that there's two independent sense of self people going into a relationship. And I think that's what can catch us sometimes, is that we believe we have a good sense of self until we're in a relationship and realizing,
and you find out we suck.
I am not independent.
To your point, though, the healthy relationship requires the two people, who have that sense of self, right? What did Dan Siegel call it? Your autonomous self, right? Like you are who you are, and do like the Jerry Maguire thing, because a pastor friend of mine said that when he does premarital counseling, one of the first questions he asks the couple in front of him is, why do you want to spend the rest of your life with this person? And he says, if they give me any version of the other person completes me, I tell them you're not ready yet.
Right.
Because if you don't have a healthy sense of self, you're not going to function well in a relationship. And I think why I said this is potentially complicated, because specifically when it comes to parenting, we tend to lose our identities, right? Because let's take this a couple of steps. So in marriage, Ryan and Kayla are married. I don't become Kayla's husband. She doesn't become Ryan's wife in terms of that, right? Our identity is still Ryan and Kayla, who have come together to be and are married,
and who are a husband and
a wife, right? But my identity is not in my spouse's name,
right?
Even though you take your husband's last name. That's what I said. It's complicated, but when you think about it, when it comes to parenting, a lot of times, so many of us become, Josh's dad, and stuff like that, and your entire sense of identity is tied into this one thing that you do,
right?
And that's not healthy. That's why we're big proponents of self-care. That's why we're big proponents of getting to know who you really are. But yeah, I think I might be belaboring the point now. I just say that it's complicated.
Excuse me. I really liked you going down the avenue of identity as a whole, because I think that's really common in our culture to take on whatever it is that we spend the majority of our time doing.
Yeah, it's good.
And so I'm not just a therapist. And in fact, I ran into somebody and they were commenting on our exchange of, well, you're a therapist. And I said, right, I'm Lori Fungi. And right now, outside of an office, I'm much more than just a therapist. And so to pigeonhole me that way, or just to identify, I think that's a personal struggle with everybody of really, who am I and what roles do I encompass and what's my identity? And so to me, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a bonus mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a Christian, the list goes on. And so I think it's really important that we take the time to view ourselves as a whole, as the whole person, rather than just what we spend the majority of our time doing.
Yeah, so that was really, really good. And so I want to restate something that I said a couple of minutes ago. And that is just to be clear that part of my identity is Kayla's husband. Mm-hmm. Part of my identity is Josh's dad.
Sure.
But those things individually are not the totality
right.
of my identity. And so I think we just have to be really careful, because being who you really are and who God designed you to be is healthy. It is really, really healthy. But here's the thing that I like about relationships. We talk about this. I think we've talked about this on the podcast or I know we've talked about this in front of camera somewhere. I don't remember where it was. But the stages of regulation, right? And so you have the completely other regulated, then the co-regulated, and then the self-regulated, which is the independent person, right?
Right.
But you can't get there unless those other things were done for you. So if we want to bring it back into a parenting context, then the hard news for parents is that when we have 8-year-olds in our home that did not have anybody regulate them, they don't know how, right? So you have to teach this to them. So, I have memories of my wife rocking 7-year-olds to sleep at night. I have memories of 8-year-olds drinking out of sippy cups.
Right.
Because somebody had to help them as if they were infants. And so I think it's important to remember that we can't skip any of that development. And so if kids are coming into our home where nobody cared for them and met their needs, we have to go back to where the train went off the tracks, which is at the point where nobody cared for them or took care of their needs. And so, it's stages, and we have to go through those stages because the goal is to be able to be an independent person, because only independent people can truly be interdependent.
Yes.
And what those actions of you and Kayla are showing to your kiddos, or what the outcome we hope is that by doing the rocking and by doing that really big nurturing, that deep nurturing, is that we hope that we cultivate our children to become dependent upon us. And if you have kiddos in your home that are from the system, that's going to take some time for the trust and the security and the protection and all those feelings and emotions to settle in so much where that child feels as though they can be dependent upon you, that they need you, that they can actually understand, I need this person. This person has been front and center for me, always consistent, predictable, here for me. I need that in my life. And once that need is starting to develop, then like you said, you have the opportunity to get to this place of independence. But without that need being present, that child or that adult will never get there.
Well, think about some of the other episodes we talked about. I think the first one in this kind of cycle was an overview of the hallmarks of secure attachment, and then we did receiving care. No? Giving care. Which one did we do first?
Giving first.
We did giving care.
Giving first, right.
It is better to give than to receive, right?
That's good advice, Sean.
For some people.
Somebody should write that down somewhere. Think about this. You just talked about being completely dependent before it can be completely independent. If you are not dependent on somebody, you will not go to them for help.
Right.
Right. It's tied together. That's why these things are so intertwined, which is why the phrase interdependent, the word interdependence, is pretty cool, because all of these things are intertwined. Because if I am completely dependent on you and I trust that you will meet my needs, I will go to you and have you meet my needs, right? That's a healthy relationship where I trust that you will act in my best interest, where I trust that you will be there for me when I need you. And so that's why I love Jude Cassidy's work, because it just kind of distilled a lot of things down to, and I guess I'm not trying to be reductionist here, but I guess that's what distilled down means, to 4 points that make complete sense to me. And so, like, if these are present in a relationship, then we're doing good, then we're doing well.
Yeah.
I'm from the Commonwealth. We were doing well. The Queen was on our money at one point. If I'd said we're doing good, Elizabeth would just sit up in her bed in the palace and sense a disturbance in the force.
When I'm talking to adults about this and kind of gauging, of these 4 things, which one do you feel like you're nailing it? Which ones do you think that you could work a little harder on? And this is one of the most common ones. And the response back is, how do I know whether or not I'm doing a really good job? And I said, let's stop and picture you getting into your car and having a whole you day, where you go to a restaurant, you sit down, you have the appetizer, you have the main course, you might have a glass of wine or whatever that is, and you have dessert, and you don't ever bring out your phone. You sit completely by yourself, and then after your amazing, luxurious meal, you go to a movie by yourself. Now, where's your stress level in just imagining that
On a scale
happening?
of 0 to 10?
Yeah, 10.
Like 15.
Yeah.
Because what you just described to me is a miserable day.
Right?
Like hanging out by yourself all day in a movie theater?
So maybe this
like
is
that?
a testament
No.
that we might
What is
need
wrong
to
with
work
you?
on your interdependence a
Several
little bit.
people have lists. Sean, I can send you their email addresses if you want to know what's wrong with me.
Can I be the first one?
Man, yeah.
If I can tell them what's wrong with me.
But that's a great point, because what's valued by one person, and it kind of is to the exact point that we're talking about, is that who you are is important and
Yeah.
you've got to respect and honor who you are to be fully present for others in the context of relationship, right? Like I've gone to movies by myself and I've found it to be quite enjoyable. And I hear you say, that sounds like a nightmare, right? And that plays out. If you've ever been in conversation with Brian and I, you will learn very quickly that he is the much better conversationalist than I am. But that's a fantastic point that I think that you guys just illustrated.
Yeah.
Is that the variety that exists.
Well, I used to say things like, as I get older, but it's not that I get older. It's as I actually come to terms with who I am, right? And that just happens to track in parallel. Not a mind blow and just a bellhop.
Wow.
I'm wowing him, you're wowing me.
I
That was
am.
awesome. Can you wow her?
Hold on. Wow. Was that? That felt a bit delayed.
It did, and a little anticlimactic. There weren't a lot of feeling. I get crickets?
I felt like that was more for me, but okay. If you want to make it about you, that's fine.
Wow.
Back to hopefully what will end as a good point. I hope. But I used to think like as I get older, but it's not about getting older. It is coming to terms with who I am, because when I was about 25, 30 years old, the idea of going to a movie by myself was almost terrifying. Like I could feel the stress in my body, because I think the whole time, like you couldn't find one person to go to a movie with you. Like I couldn't concentrate. It was like a mirror being held up saying you don't have good relationships. I don't understand it at the time.
Right.
Like I can watch stuff by myself now, but that's because the last 10 years there's been a fair amount of hard work being done in coming to terms with who I am and making sense of where I come from and stuff like that. But it is a good point that you make that. Here's the point. If you can't go to the movie theater by yourself, you need to notice that that's a relationship red flag and work through it.
Well, and I think it just means that you put a lot of value on relationships. And so
That's kind of you, but I think what it means is that I have a hard time being alone.
Right. And that's the other side.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you do put a big value on relationships. You function best in relationship with other people. And not that relationships are important, but I mean, I think we're kind of leading into introverts versus extroverts,
yes.
right? What kind of those relationships look like.
That's where I was going.
But in the same breath, like you said, and I'll let you say it because they were your words, that maybe there's
she's
some
such
work.
a generous soul.
No, what she's wanting me to do, she's playing therapist tricks. She wants me to admit my problems because she knows I can't
Not
get help.
admit, just self-claim.
Not admit, self-claim.
So skillful.
Sean, can you help me understand the difference between admit and self-claim?
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to point out that, like what you were saying, and because you said, well, if I can't go to the movie by myself, then clearly I've got issues. Not necessarily. Like you can want to go to the movie with other people and it still be healthy. Like that's kind of the point that I was trying to make. Like I think that so many times, especially in the context of social media, and everybody is able to kind of compare ourselves to everyone else's best foot forward of themselves. We downgrade our personal whatever it is in the moment, and all of us think like if I want to go to the movie by myself, I would be lying if I didn't say I think, well, what are people going to think about me? That seems kind of weird, like going to a movie by myself, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah, because it's that social.
I don't have any
it's that
like
peer
that
pressure.
doesn't ever come across my mind. I love.
All right, well, my point's disproven, and she is apparently the perfect human.
Not easy.
Are you self-claiming that? So
where's my stamp? I need a stamp.
Do you have ownership over that statement?
Not to cut you off. I'm kidding.
No, you go. You go, because you did have something.
No,
to say.
I was going to say in response to that, because I feel like we're slightly at odds about the movie thing, and my only point being that to me it felt uncomfortable because, like, I didn't understand it, but looking back, I understand it now that I couldn't point to like really great relationships, because if I had any good relationships, I could have asked somebody to go to the movies with me.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And then you wonder like, what are people doing? Well, it's you play all these tricks on yourself, and now if I like watch something by myself, I'm like, wow, it's just nice to have a minute, and I'm not concerned about what's going on because I feel secure in other relationships. Like when we were first married, if my wife would go out, I'd say, well, what time are you coming home? And she'd say, well, like 9:30. And then like at 9:30, she's not home. So like at 9:45, I'm like, where are you? Oh, I'm still here. I'm like, well, why did you tell me you were coming home at 9:30? And now, like, I'll check the calendar because we have a shared family calendar
Yeah.
at what time. And I'm like, oh, she'll stay an extra hour. And I just don't have a bugger about it because the quality of the relationship is much stronger now than it was almost 20 years
Right.
ago.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of my thoughts on the movie theater thing too, is that I have more secure relationships and I have more healthy relationships now than I did 25 years ago. And because of that, and I'm in a better place, which obviously is a contributing factor to having healthy relationships. And because of those things, I can go to the movie theater by myself now and enjoy the movie. But 25 years ago, it was just stressful for me to do that.
Sure. And I think a lot of that is developmental too, just your age and where you are in your stage of life. And I think relationships are really important in your 20s, or we at least make them a priority in our 20s. Versus not the number of relationships, not quantity versus quality, right? And now we're at a place where we can really appreciate quality relationships. And just going back to the movie, I think we can substitute, well, I hope that we substitute anything for the movie. It's not the movie aspect. It's are you able to go to the grocery store by yourself, or do you wait till your spouse and you can go together on the weekend? Do you feel comfortable doing anything in solidarity to yourself, or do you feel like you always need somebody there? Looking at relationships, are you a person who finishes one relationship, an intimate relationship, and goes to the next one without taking time to self-care and
so
to
good.
figure out what you gained and what you lost in that relationship?
Gosh, that's a great question,
just
Lori.
things like that. Do you constantly need other people in your life to bring you fulfillment and feel a sense of purpose? And if the answer to that is yes, then we might need to evaluate how we're doing interdependence and what that looks like for us.
Well, I think I like the usage of the word interdependence there, because I think for a lot of times people think that the options in relationship are independent or codependent.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and so what you're suggesting is there's a third way, and that is to be independent people. So interdependence is really the healthy version of independent codependence.
Absolutely.
You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the stream and bank analogy in The Whole Brain Child, where one side was chaos and the other side was rigidity.
Yeah.
What's the whole brain child?
What's this you speak of?
If you don't know what the Whole Brain Child book is, you can check out our 5-part series on. We like fives.
I'm a good setup man.
Yeah, but in the context of what we're describing, people tend to think of it as like you're on one end or the other, and if that one's bad, then you got to go to the other side.
Yeah.
But somewhere in the middle of the stream is where you want to be. You don't want to be on either of those banks, right?
Well,
Maybe.
close.
Oh.
No, I'd say close, because obviously you want to be independent, which is the one bank, right? And so maybe it's a healthy mix of inter-codependence was a bit of a false lead over there, because I think that codependent is where you can't function without the other person. Interdependent is where I can function without the other person, but I choose to function with them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
So maybe that's the middle of the stream, and the other side, the other bank, isn't that. The other side of the bank is like isolation.
So isolation versus codependent and introvert. Yeah?
Potentially.
Potentially. To me, that illustration makes more sense.
Do the math; it'll play out.
Do you see the wheels turning?
Don't make funny. I think you're making a really good point there. Sean's flight response. No, I'm kidding. I know it's because it's mine.
So easily recognizable.
Hey, do you have a flight response episode we can reference, or do we have to do that one still?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think that's one we still have to do.
So and looking at the clock there, I know we're close to having to wrap up here, but I do want to just say something and bring it back to the context of parenting. When your kids are needy, and I know that that's sometimes potentially exhausting. It's really right, because it is the first step to them becoming healthy, independent people who can function in relationship with other people.
By meeting those needs. When they're needing, you being present, consistent, predictable, and meeting those needs.
Yeah, no, yes, absolutely. The only point I was trying to make was actually like when they express those needs, don't just dismiss it as needy. Think to yourself, well, that's how
that dependence.
That's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That's where kids have to start. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, in foster care, specifically, we sometimes only get the opportunity to start that when they're 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which makes it hard, because it's easy when a 2-year-old is whining for something, but when an 8-year-old's acting like a 2-year-old, it's really, really difficult. And you have to remember that nobody met that kid's needs, and so you have to we don't derail the train and then 200 yards down the track put it back when you have to put it back at the point it was derailed.
And it's important to remember, I mean, Ryan's statement is 100% accurate, but it's relative. And what I mean there is it's easy when it's a 2-year-old that's doing it, but not if you've never had an 8-year-old do it. Like if you've only had a 2-year-old do it, it can feel really daunting, right? In the context of an 8-year-old doing it or a 15-year-old, acting like a 3 or a 4-year-old, that is kind of an escalation there. But
and also with parenting, there's kind of a paradox because developmentally we know that toddlerhood, and then we call it the second toddlerhood, meaning adolescence, are these 2 times in a child's life where they're really trying to seek autonomy. That's where we get the me, mine, mine. You see that in 2 and 3-year-olds, but you also, if you're a parent of teenagers, you've seen it in your 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and that's where it's starting to really foster. In the same breath, this is the stage in adolescence where relationships have huge weight and importance to the children. And so I think my encouragement or my plea with you is be one of those people that have the healthy relationship. Be the one that has the autonomy and the interdependence so that you can model that for your teenagers.
Absolutely.
But also being mindful that they're going to have layers and layers of codependence just because they're a teenager, regardless of their past. Now, when we add trauma into that past, that codependence is going to be even deeper and more ingrained. And that's where you come in, understanding and identifying where you are in your own interdependence and what you can model for that kiddo. Now, if you're both codependent, that's going to be a very tumultuous relationship.
Which is why parents have to do the work to be healthy.
That's right, and
themselves.
have the self-awareness.
Because relationships need at least 2 people.
That's right.
Right, and it's never ever going to be what it needs to be if only one of you is healthy, and you're probably not going to recognize the bad stuff if you don't know what the good stuff looks like.
That's right.
Somebody tweet that. Go on, right now, tweet it.
Hashtag.
So okay,
Hashtag.
we're gonna start wrapping this one up. I think. Dang it.
I'm agreeing that we should wrap it up.
We're going to do a graphic for the next show, and it's just going to say hashtag ditto and have Ryan's face like giant behind it. But
I don't know what to do with that.
we'll go around. Final thoughts on interdependence and the importance of interdependence in the context of healthy relationship. Who wants to go first?
I will. A homework assignment to anyone listening. That's right. Challenge extended. I encourage you to try to go to either a meal or a movie by yourself. And Chick-fil-A, Wendy's, McDonald's, those don't count.
You cannot be by yourself at Chick-fil-A.
No.
You can't. You
Only
need to
on Sunday.
It's like a license to print money on one of those things.
You could be at Chick-fil-A by yourself on Sunday.
And you will be.
Yeah.
It's got to be a place you walk into and there's a hostess that takes you to your table where you say a table for one with ownership and acceptance of that.
I have 6 children. What's a hostess?
I want to throw down and say that you should ask for a table for 4 and go by yourself. Because that ups the ante.
Because I have no tables for one. They make you sit at the bar.
As a waiter and hostess, please don't do that. It's not kind.
Yeah, you can't. Do you say table for one?
Table for 1.
But that's just sitting at the bar.
No, it's always offered. The bar is available, but don't do that because now you're not.
I know.
You're not interdependent. But yeah, go sit in your booth or by your table by yourself.
It's a good challenge. How do you want them to provide their feedback on the assignment?
Tell us how it went on the Facebook group page.
Facebook group page? What's that?
I'm so glad you asked, Sean Wilson.
Wow.
So if you didn't already know.
That's P.T. Barnum-like right there.
Yeah. We'll get to Ryan's last thoughts in just a moment, but I can't miss this opportunity. We have a Facebook group, and if you have not already joined it, it is open to the world. You do have to have a pulse and a Facebook profile
but
account,
that's it.
I think. But other than that, we're pretty lenient on who we allow in. It is the name of the show, Foster Family Matters, and so you can find it at facebook.com/groups/Foster Family Matters.
That's right.
And go and join, and we will all expect. What's the deadline for? We'll give them a week. You got a week.
Ooh, you got 2 weeks.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay, you got 2 weeks.
Some people are going to have to pump themselves up to do it.
And we see you. We see you. We know who you are. And we're going to check. And if you haven't turned in your homework assignment within the next 2 weeks, we're going to start posting things
coming after you.
in your timeline.
Like the hashtag ditto picture with my face. That's it.
Yeah.
final thoughts. So often when we work with parents, we'll ask them, well, what do you want? What are your goal as a parent? And they'll say some version of, we want to raise a healthy, well-adjusted, independent member of society who loves the Lord. And that's great. I think that's a great goal to have. But the follow-up question has to be, well, what are you prepared to do those things? Because if I want to raise an independent member of society, I first have to deal with the fact that that person has to be completely dependent relationally in order to be independent. And once they are able to go from dependence to independence, they can then function in relationships with other people. Because your ability to live in right relationship with other people determines a lot of good things, good or bad for you. Your ability or inability to live in right relationship with other people professionally. I mean, if you can't deal with your coworkers, they're not going to be your coworkers anymore. Now, it's not just about mom and dad stuff. It's like you cannot live in isolation in the world we live in, even though some people wish they could. Everything requires some level of being able to interact with other human beings, and that skill is learned at home. Mm-hmm. So don't shy away from, oh my gosh, that kid's needy. Go, oh my gosh, what a privilege it is to meet their needs.
Absolutely. And just in a nutshell, all this comes back to your ability to put yourself first.
Yeah. I know. Well, yeah, you have to explain that a little bit because that went like slightly left of what I thought you were going to say.
As you were talking, I was thinking, it's one thing to be in relationships, but when we look at being independent, we think, I can take care of my car by myself, or I can change a tire, or I can cook this meal, or I can live on my own. That's me being independent, right? I'm an independent person. And I think when parents come to us with this idea, they're thinking at some point, I want my kid to move out. I want my kid to be independent and be able to have their own life. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I don't want that to get misconstrued with the idea of putting yourself first and making sure it's the airplane analogy of putting on your own face mask before taking care of your kiddos, right? You have to be okay before you can tend to anyone else in around you or in your home. And so to be interdependent and to be autonomous means that I find value and worth within myself, and I deserve the attention that is due to make sure that I can be independent, that I can be a source for somebody else. So for our parents, we're really coming back to pouring into yourself so that your kids can be dependent upon you.
Yeah, so hold on. I just want to say, since she had a follow-up to my closing
I feel like you guys are just rebutting each other back and forth.
No.
I'm sorry, senators, but the debate is over. Your time has expired.
I think you're going to enjoy if you let me make my comment, because I think she just validated.
There was cohesion.
Yes, I think what she did was just validate what you said the two banks were between the river's interdependence, and the one side's codependent and the other side's isolation. No, I think now that that's kind of played out a little bit, I think that's a really great analogy, because being able to change your tire, being able to cook your own food, and all the things you listed is not a sign of independence. It's a sign of actual
competency.
Yeah,
you're competent in those
at
areas.
best, but it's also a sign of isolation, because you are just comfortable taking care of yourself, and we were made to care for each other and to be cared for. Right?
That's right.
Give care, receive care, and we can't lose sight of that.
So you guys have both tied into my final thoughts.
Your rebuttal to my comments.
You were right the whole time.
Very well.
Your rebuttal to my comments, Lauren?
I generally live my life thinking that way, and I just have to wait for everybody to come back around to my way of thinking.
Wow, that's going to be my closing thought in the next episode. But eventually y'all will agree with it.
So you'll clue in.
I think we've had great discussion, and the two of you guys have done a great job of fleshing this out and the importance of interdependence. I want to remind everyone, and I've done this in every episode, so you might be tired of hearing it by now, but I think it ties in well with what you guys are kind of summing up here, is that you can only work on you, right? Like you've only got one brain, you're only responsible for it. You may have influence over those that are in your sphere of influence, and that's why they call it a sphere of influence, by the way. Fun fact.
Didn't know.
But don't take on yourself the responsibility of thinking for other people and trying to ensure their ability to love themselves and be confident in themselves and those sorts of things. They've got to do that. the work there, and in a relationship, and this is where it starts to bleed over into kind of the codependence type of a thing, is when you start to take on the responsibility for ensuring that other person is a good caregiver and a good care receiver and excellent at using the principles of interdependence in the context of a healthy relationship. Like, it's exactly what Lori said. It's exactly what Ryan said. It's you've got to be secure in yourself, and you've got to focus on yourself. And while you're doing that, everyone else is doing the same thing. And here's the beauty of it. And I love this saying, but and I don't know where it originated from. It did not originate from me. But
I'm going to claim it.
When you're,
I don't even know what it is yet, but I'm going to claim it.
How to claim it when he said it?
How did you know?
Well done, Funky.
I was going to say I'm going to claim it. I love that phrase. No, it's
good guess.
The phrase is remember who you are and whose you are, and
I did say that.
It plays. I've heard it other places. If you've said it
both ways,
I've heard it from my early childhood. Someone in my early childhood would say this to me because it's ingrained in my person,
yeah.
and it's a good way, and it means. I've had folks as an adult, when I say it to them, go, what do you mean by whose you are? Well, and it's kind of, for me, it's in the context of my Christian faith and in my relationship with God, in that I remember who I am, in that I am a child of God, and I remember whose I am, in that I am a child of God. Yeah. And everything else kind of branches out from there, right? And how fantastic in the context of a healthy relationship for those in the Christian faith, at least, that we have that kind of signpost or milestone that we can tie to, that we hopefully are all kind of emanating from, is that we center our relationship on God, and then all of the rest of it just kind of falls into place. And it's not that it's easy,
right? Because
we're human, but if we will take that approach and start there 100% of the time and recenter every morning and say, who am I and whose am I, then the rest of it just kind of becomes a little easier.
Yeah.
I'm going to give that an amen. Like, drop
amen.
Amen.
You should have said, can I get a witness?
Amen.
I really, really appreciate that point.
No, you go.
And that perspective, Sean. Thank you. It really.
That's him, not you.
Me again.
I'm trying to.
There's
give
a little bit of a delay on the
and
drops.
Perfection and job well done, and you're just using humor to deflect.
Deflect as well.
Go ahead and deflect.
So I was going to say to that, Sean, that I agree with everything Laurie was trying to say.
But wasn't allowed to?
because
hold on. Let me step over you too.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, wrong one. Nope.
Anyhow, yes, more jazz hands from Dr. Fungi. I just love how I just gave her a PhD.
Coming soon.
But our mission statement, we talk about the physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being of at-risk children and families. And when we share that in intro and orientation, we always talk about how we recognize that mission statement that we are, the whole person is made up of those three things. Mm-hmm. And meeting the physical needs of the child is the easy one, right? They got the shelter, they got their own room, clothing, food, they're safe, right? All of those things. Emotional is next level, because we have to, the things we've been talking about in this episode and in the previous couple, that's really big, and that's a little bit harder, because you cannot meet someone's emotional needs if you're not at some place if you're not at least trending towards emotional health yourself, right? And then, of course, sometimes we ignore the spiritual needs, but I think that we do need to be praying for our kids daily, like if and just got to remember that I think the point you're trying to make is that ultimate healing does come from the Lord and not from us, and have to trust Him for that. So
that's it.
Yeah,
that's
why I love the mission statement, and we read it every time we have a group of people together, because we have to recognize that the whole person is the sum of those parts.
That's right.
It's beautiful. All right, guys. Let's put a bow on this one. We already did I feel like we should have like subsequent ending points. Like we had a whole nother episode within an episode.
We have things to say today. Good things to say.
The last things that I want to say are, if you're enjoying the show, please remember to like us, star us, thumbs up us,
subscribe,
retweet us, subscribe,
thumbs up us,
thumbs. Yeah.
I'm going to get that on a shirt for you, Sean.
Sometimes
I know a guy.
Sometimes words are hard. I should really plan this out.
For the
outro
t-shirt
thing.
or the thumbs?
But
I was thinking T-shirt, but we could probably find a guy for
the point that I'm trying to get to is we are trying to grow the show, and we believe that there's value in the words that we're saying, and if you agree with us, help us by sharing it with those who you think would benefit. And the name of the show is Foster Family Matters, and we want to keep all of our episodes kind of within the realm of parenting and family, but we recognize and we've received feedback that folks are drawing value from this show who aren't necessarily parents, even people that are just struggling with relationships within the context of family, and for some people the context of family includes co-working environments or friendship circles and that sort of thing like that. So share it with everybody, and we would really appreciate that. Also, the Facebook group, don't forget, go and join, because you've got a homework assignment. It's due in 2 weeks, actually 2 weeks minus 20 minutes, give or take. So get started on that.
Wow, that's harsh.
And
the time deadline.
Wow.
yeah, I think that's it. Anybody else?
No.
No.
Okay.
Excited for
with
next
that,
time.
we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.